How did a single misplaced envelope unravel the months of lies my own family used to exploit me? When I finally opened the papers my sister tried to hide, I discovered the truth about the betrayal in my own home, and calmly set in motion a plan that would leave them with nothing. In the end, I made sure everyone in court saw them for who they really were. The alarm buzzed at 5:30 a.m., same as every weekday for the past 8 months. I rolled out of bed in my own house, though lately it felt more like a boarding facility I happened to own. Padding downstairs in my robe, I started the coffee maker and began my morning routine, the one small ritual that still felt entirely mine. By 6:15, the kitchen filled with the sounds of my temporary house guests. Denise Harper Sutherland, my younger sister, swept in wearing her silk pajamas, immediately claiming the largest coffee mug. Her husband Peter followed, already dressed for another day of what he generously called job searching. Behind them shuffled their sons, Connor, 19 and fresh from dropping out of community college, and Aiden, 17 and counting down the days until graduation freed him from any pretense of responsibility. "Morning, Ethan," Denise said without looking up from her phone. It was the extent of acknowledgement I'd receive. I set down plates for everyone, poured orange juice, and retrieved the newspaper from the front porch. When I returned, Peter had claimed my usual chair at the head of the table, the one that faced the window overlooking the backyard I'd spent 3 years landscaping. "Bills came yesterday," Denise announced, sliding an envelope across the table. "Electric's up 40%. Probably should look into better insulation for this old place." I opened the bill. $437. Before my sister's family moved in temporarily, my highest electric bill had been $160. "I'll take care of it," I said quietly. "Course you will," Peter chuckled, buttering his toast with theatrical enthusiasm. "Good landlords always handle utilities. Though technically, since we're family, I guess that makes you more of a, what would you call it, honey?" "A saint," Denise replied without missing a beat. "Ethan's always been the responsible one." Connor snorted into his cereal. "Responsible's one word for it." I bit back my response and focused on my coffee. 8 months ago, when Peter lost his job at the auto dealership, I'd opened my home without hesitation. Family helped family. That's how we'd been raised. What I hadn't anticipated was how quickly temporary would stretch into indefinite, or how completely my quiet nature would be mistaken for weakness. "Oh, before I forget," Peter continued, "my buddy Rick's coming by Saturday for the barbecue. Hope that's cool with you, landlord." The barbecue. Right. The one Peter had planned in my backyard, using my grill with my money for groceries. I'd learned about it yesterday when Aiden asked if he could invite his girlfriend. "That's fine," I said. "Awesome. Rick's really eager to see the place. I've been telling him about the deck you built. He's impressed that someone could do that kind of work solo." "Dad, can I borrow the car tonight?" Connor interrupted, meeting some friends downtown. "Ask your uncle," Peter replied smoothly. "It's his car." Connor turned to me with the practiced expression of someone who'd never heard the word no. "Uncle Ethan? Just for a few hours?" "Where are you going?" "Just hanging out, nothing crazy." "I need it back by midnight." "Sure, whatever." I slid him the keys, knowing full well I wouldn't see the car until morning, if I was lucky. Last time Connor borrowed it, he'd returned it with an empty gas tank and a parking ticket tucked under the floor mat. The morning continued in its established pattern. Denise complained about the water pressure in the master bathroom, my former bedroom, which I'd vacated to give them more space. Peter critiqued my choice of breakfast cereal. Aiden left his dishes in the sink and disappeared upstairs without a word. By 7:30, I was alone again. The quiet felt different now than it had before they moved in. Then it had been peaceful. Now it felt like the eye of a storm, temporary and fragile. Saturday's barbecue arrived with unseasonable warmth for October. I'd spent the morning grocery shopping, loading up on steaks, burgers, and beer for Peter's friends, men I'd met briefly but who treated my backyard like their personal country club. By afternoon, the patio buzzed with laughter and conversation that stopped whenever I approached. "There he is," Peter called out as I carried another cooler of beer outside. "Guys, meet my brother-in-law Ethan, the man who makes all this possible." Rick, a barrel-chested man with a goatee, raised his bottle in salute. "Hell of a place you got here, Ethan. Pete's been bragging about this deck all month." "Thank you," I said, setting down the cooler. "Built it yourself, right? That's impressive. Most guys our age, they hire contractors for anything bigger than hanging a picture." Connor appeared at Rick's elbow, grinning. "Uncle Ethan's got lots of time for projects. Not much else going on, if you know what I mean." The comment landed with surgical precision. Rick's smile faltered slightly, and I felt heat creep up my neck. Around the patio, conversations quieted as everyone waited to see how I'd respond. Connor, Denise said mildly, but her tone carried more amusement than reproach. What? I'm just saying Uncle Ethan's got the bachelor life figured out. No wife to tell him how to spend his weekends, no kids to drain his bank account. Must be nice having all that freedom. And all that disposable income, Aiden added, appearing with perfect timing. Right, Uncle Ethan? The patio erupted in uncomfortable laughter. I stood there holding an empty cooler, feeling like a specimen under glass. These were my nephews, kids I'd taken to baseball games, helped with homework, supported through their parents' rough patches. Now they were using me as entertainment for strangers. Well, I said finally, I should check on the grill. Good idea, Peter called after me. Can't have the help burning dinner. More laughter followed me across the deck. As I bent over the grill, adjusting burgers that didn't need adjusting, I caught sight of my mother through the kitchen window. Martha Harper had arrived an hour earlier, bearing potato salad and her usual diplomatic smile. Now she stood at the sink, watching the scene unfold with the carefully neutral expression she'd perfected over decades of family gatherings. When our eyes met, she gave me a small shake of her head. Not disapproval of her grandson's behavior, but a warning. Don't make waves, don't create drama, keep the peace. I turned back to the grill and kept my mouth shut. Later, as I cleared plates and empty bottles from the patio, I overheard Denise and Peter talking in low voices near the back door. Moving things forward before he wakes up, Denise was saying. You think he suspects? Peter's voice carried a note of concern. Ethan, please. He's too worried about being the good guy to ask hard questions. Besides, Mom's keeping him in line. Still, we should be careful. If he starts paying attention, he won't. Trust me, I know my brother. I froze, a stack of plates balanced in my hands. The conversation continued, but their voices dropped too low to make out individual words. After a moment, they moved inside, leaving me alone on the deck with a growing sense of unease. Before he wakes up. Wakes up to what? The unease from Saturday's barbecue lingered through the following week, coloring every interaction with new suspicion. I found myself paying attention to conversations that stopped when I entered rooms, to the way Denise and Peter exchanged glances when they thought I wasn't looking. It hadn't always been like this. 8 months ago, when Peter lost his job, the dynamic had been entirely different. I remembered the phone call clearly, Denise crying, explaining how they'd fallen behind on rent, how the landlord was threatening eviction. They just needed a few weeks to get back on their feet. I hate asking, she'd said through tears, but we have nowhere else to go. I'd driven over that same evening to help them pack. The apartment was small and cluttered, filled with furniture that wouldn't fit in my house. We'd rented a storage unit for the overflow, with me covering the deposit and first 3 months' fees. Just temporary, Denise had assured me, just until Peter found work. The transition had been rocky but manageable. I'd moved from the master bedroom to the smaller guest room, giving Denise and Peter more space for their things. The boys had taken over the finished basement, turning it into their personal entertainment center. My home office became a shared space, my desk pushed into one corner to make room for Denise's craft supplies. You're a lifesaver, she told me that first week. I don't know how we'll ever repay you. It's what family does, I'd replied, and meant it. The first month had almost felt like an extended vacation. Denise cooked elaborate dinners, Peter helped with yard work, and the boys were on their best behavior. I'd even enjoyed the company after years of living alone. The house felt more alive, filled with voices and activity. But somewhere around month 2, the gratitude began to fade. Denise stopped cooking, claiming she was too stressed about their situation. Peter's help with yard work dwindled to occasional lawn mowing, and only when I asked directly. The boys grew comfortable enough to treat my house like their own, leaving messes and expecting me to clean them up. By month 4, I'd become invisible in my own home. Decisions were made without consulting me. Plans were announced rather than discussed. When I'd mentioned feeling like a guest in my own house, Denise had laughed it off. Don't be dramatic, Ethan. We're all family here. The job search that had seemed so urgent in those first weeks gradually became an abstract concept. Peter would leave the house each morning, dressed professionally, but I began to notice he was always back by noon. When I asked about interviews, he'd wave dismissively and mention networking or following up on leads. 3 months ago, my company had offered me a promotion that would have meant relocating to their Denver office. The salary increase would have been substantial, and the opportunities for advancement were exactly what I'd been working toward for years. But with Denise's family settled in my house, the timing seemed impossible. You can't leave now, Denise had said when I mentioned the offer. We're finally getting stable. Peter's got some real prospects lined up. It's a great opportunity, I'd argued weakly. There will be other opportunities. Family comes first, right? I'd turned down the promotion, telling myself it was the right thing to do. My sister needed me. Her children needed stability. I could always apply for other positions later. Now, sitting in Murphy's Tavern on a Thursday evening, I watched Peter hold court at the bar, regaling his friends with stories about his latest business ventures. I'd come here to grab dinner alone, needing a break from the constant noise at home. I hadn't expected to find my brother-in-law treating the place like his personal social club. Best investment I ever made, Peter was saying, gesturing with his beer bottle. Location, location, location. That's what real estate's all about. His buddy Rick leaned forward, interested. You buying rental properties now? Better than that. Got myself a sweet setup with this house. Prime neighborhood, mature trees, custom deck overlooking a professionally landscaped backyard. The works. Sounds expensive. That's the beauty of it. I got in on the ground floor. Family connections. You know how it is. Sometimes it's not what you know, it's who you know. Rick nodded appreciatively. Smart move. Property values in that area have been climbing for years. Tell me about it. I'm sitting on a gold mine. I sat frozen in my booth, fork halfway to my mouth. Peter was talking about my house, the house I'd bought with my own money, renovated with my own hands, and opened to his family out of generosity. But listening to him, you'd think he was the owner, the investor, the one who'd made smart financial decisions. Of course, the place needed some work when I got it, Peter continued. Previous owner didn't really know how to maximize the potential. But I've got vision, already planning some renovations for next spring. What kind of renovations? Another friend asked. Thinking about knocking out the wall between the kitchen and dining room. Open concepts where the market's heading. Maybe add a sunroom off the back, kind of really take advantage of that yard space. My yard, my kitchen, my dining room. I left $20 on the table and walked out, Peter's laughter following me into the parking lot. The next morning, I found myself in my mother's apartment, sitting at her small dinette table while she fussed over coffee and homemade cookies. Martha Harper had moved to senior living 2 years ago, claiming she wanted to downsize before age made the decision for her. The apartment was cozy and efficient, decorated with family photos spanning 5 decades. You look tired, honey, she said, settling across from me with her own cup. Just working a lot. How are things at home? Denise mentioned the boys are keeping you busy. They're fine. I stirred my coffee, choosing my words carefully. Mom, how long did Denise say they'd be staying? Martha's expression grew cautious. Well, these things take time. Peter's looking for the right opportunity, not just any job. It's been 8 months. I know it's an adjustment, but family helps family, Ethan. That's how we were raised. I'm not complaining about helping. Sometimes I feel like they've forgotten this is temporary. Have you talked to Denise about your concerns? Every time I bring it up, she gets upset, says I'm making her feel unwelcome. Martha reached across the table and patted my hand. Denise has been through a lot. Losing their apartment, Peter's job situation. It's been very stressful for her. She just needs to know her family supports her. I do support her. I've supported her for 8 months. I know, honey, and it's appreciated. But maybe try to be patient a little longer. Things will work themselves out. I wanted to tell her about Peter's conversation at the bar, about the way my nephews talked about me at the barbecue, about the growing sense that I was being taken advantage of. But looking at my mother's worried face, I kept quiet. She'd raised us to avoid conflict, to smooth over problems rather than confront them directly. Rocking the boat wasn't in her nature, and she wouldn't understand why it was becoming necessary in mine. You're right, I said finally. I'm probably just tired. That's my boy. Everything will work out fine. But as I drove home, I couldn't shake the feeling that fine might mean very different things to different people. That evening, while taking out the trash, I overheard Connor talking to someone on his phone in the garage. His voice carried clearly in the cool air. Well, Uncle Ethan's such a pushover. It's almost sad, he was saying. Like my dad could probably get him to sign over the deed if he asked nicely enough. Laughter from whoever was on the other end. Nah, he won't kick us out. He's too worried about what Grandma would think. Plus, my mom's got him totally whipped. She just has to get teary-eyed and talk about family loyalty, and he folds like a cheap suit. More laughter. I'm telling you, we could live here forever if we wanted. Uncle Ethan's never going to grow a backbone. I stood in the darkness beside the garage, trash bag forgotten in my hands, listening to my nephew mock my character to his friends. This was the kid I'd taught to ride a bike, whose college fund I'd contributed to before he dropped out, who'd never paid for a meal or a roof over his head in my house. The conversation continued, but I'd heard enough. I deposited the trash and walked back inside, my mind churning with questions I'd been avoiding for months. How long was temporary? What were Denise and Peter's actual plans? And why did everyone seem to know something I didn't? Late Tuesday night, I sat at the kitchen table sorting through the day's mail, a routine that had become more complicated since Denise's family moved in. Bills arrived addressed to multiple residents, packages needed to be sorted between mine and theirs, and I'd learned to be careful about what I left lying around after Connor had opened my credit card statement by mistake. The stack was typical for a weekday: utility bills, promotional flyers, a bank statement, and a thick manila envelope addressed to me with no return address. I was reaching for the letter opener when Denise appeared in the doorway, hair wrapped in a towel and wearing her bathrobe. "Still up?" she asked, padding to the refrigerator for a bottle of water. "Just going through the mail." She glanced over my shoulder as I opened the bank statement. "Anything interesting?" "The usual." I set the statement aside and reached for the manila envelope. "Oh, that's mine," Denise said quickly, snatching the envelope from my hands. "Sorry, must be a bank error. They're always mixing up our accounts, since we have the same last name." I looked at the envelope as she held it. "It's addressed to me." "I know, but it's about my account. I've been dealing with this issue for weeks. Something about incorrect routing numbers." She tucked the envelope under her arm, her smile bright but strained. "I'll call them in the morning and get it sorted out." "Are you sure? I could—" No, I've got it handled. You've done enough already." She kissed my forehead like I was a child. "Get some sleep. You work too hard." With that, she disappeared upstairs, leaving me alone with the remaining mail and a growing sense of unease. In 8 months of living together, Denise had never received mail at my address. All her banking and correspondence still went to a P.O. box she'd rented after losing the apartment. So why would her bank send anything to my house addressed to me? I finished sorting the remaining mail, but my mind kept returning to the envelope. Something about Denise's reaction felt wrong. Too quick, too rehearsed, and the way she'd grabbed it, like she'd been waiting for it to arrive. Wednesday dragged by at work. I found myself checking my phone constantly, waiting for updates from home that never came. By the time I got back to the house, Denise's car was gone. She'd mentioned something about taking the boys shopping for school supplies. The house felt different when empty, quieter, but also more mine somehow. I walked through the rooms, noting small changes that had accumulated over 8 months. Family photos that included Denise's family but not me, furniture arrangements that prioritized their comfort over mine, a refrigerator covered with Connor and Aiden's schedules, achievements, and inside jokes. I climbed the stairs to the master bedroom, their bedroom now. The door stood slightly ajar, and I could see the unmade bed, Denise's clothes scattered across the chair I'd bought for reading. I'd never gone through their things, respecting their privacy even in my own house, but the envelope nagged at me. What if it really was important? What if there was some banking error that affected both our accounts? What if Denise was protecting me from bad news? I pushed the door open and stepped inside. The room smelled like Denise's perfume and Peter's cologne, foreign scents in a space that had been mine for 3 years. Their belongings covered every surface: jewelry on the dresser, books on the nightstands, Peter's work clothes draped over the chair. I started with the obvious places. The dresser drawers yielded nothing but clothing. The nightstands contained typical bedroom detritus: charging cables, reading glasses, medication bottles. I was about to give up when I noticed the small desk in the corner, the one where Denise did her craft projects. The top drawer stuck slightly as I pulled it open. Inside, beneath a layer of fabric swatches and ribbon samples, I found the manila envelope. My hands shook as I lifted it out. It was definitely the same envelope from last night, addressed to me in typed letters. I opened it carefully, not wanting to damage whatever was inside. The first document was a property transfer form, partially filled out but not yet signed. My name appeared in several places, along with legal descriptions of my house and 2 rental properties I owned across town. At the bottom, spaces for signatures, mine and Denise's. The second document was a bank statement for an account I'd never seen before. A joint account, according to the header, opened 6 months ago in both our names. The balance was substantial, nearly $40,000. The transaction history showed regular deposits from my checking account, amounts I recognized as my monthly transfers to savings. Except they hadn't gone to savings, they'd gone to this joint account. The third document sent a sharp chill through me. It was a loan application, filled out in my name, using my house as collateral. The amount requested was $200,000. At the bottom, a signature that looked remarkably like mine but felt wrong somehow. The application was dated 3 weeks ago. I sat heavily on the bed, documents spread around me like evidence of a crime. Because that's what this was, wasn't it? Fraud, forgery, theft. For 8 months, I'd been worried about being taken advantage of. I'd worried about my generosity being abused, about my family overstaying their welcome. I'd never imagined they were actively stealing from me. My phone buzzed with a text from Denise. Running late. Boys wanted to stop for dinner. Home by 9. I had 2 hours. I photographed every document with my phone, then carefully returned them to the drawer exactly as I'd found them. Downstairs, I retrieved my laptop and began searching through my online banking records, looking for transactions I'd missed or misunderstood. The pattern became clear quickly. For the past 6 months, my automatic savings transfers had been redirected to the joint account. Small amounts at first, 100 here, 200 there. But recently, the transfers had grown larger and more frequent. Last month alone, nearly $8,000 had disappeared from my accounts. I pulled up my credit reports, something I should have been doing regularly but had neglected. There it was. A new mortgage application under review, a credit inquiry from a loan company I'd never heard of, and several new accounts showing recent activity. My phone rang, startling me from my research. The caller ID showed my mother's number. Hi, Mom. Hello, honey. Just wanted to check on you. You seemed upset yesterday. I'm fine. Good. Listen, Denise called me earlier. She's worried about you. Worried about me? She thinks you might be having some financial stress. Something about bank errors and account problems. I closed my eyes, understanding immediately. Denise was already building her defense, preparing explanations for what I might discover. Everything's fine, Mom. Just some confusion with automatic payments. Oh, good. You know how these banks can be with their computer systems. Denise said she's helping you sort it out. Right. She's very helpful. She is. You're lucky to have such a caring sister. After I hung up, I sat in my home office, the corner of it that was still mine, and tried to process what I'd learned. My sister, the person I'd trusted enough to open my home to, had been systematically stealing from me for months. Not just money, but my identity, my credit, my property. And she'd been laying groundwork to make it all legal, to transfer ownership of everything I'd worked for into her name. The worst part wasn't the money, though that stung. It was the realization that every conversation, every family dinner, every moment of seeming normalcy had been a lie. While I'd been worrying about being a good host, they'd been planning to rob me blind. I opened a new folder on my computer and labeled it Evidence. Then I uploaded the photos from my phone and began organizing what I'd found. If Denise wanted to play legal games with forged documents and fraudulent accounts, I'd make sure I had documentation of everything. But first, I needed help from someone I could trust. I scrolled through my contacts until I found Clara Weiss, a friend from college who'd gone into law while I'd pursued logistics. We'd stayed in touch over the years, meeting for coffee occasionally, exchanging holiday cards. She specialized in real estate and financial law, exactly what I needed. Her office number went to voicemail, but she answered her personal cell on the second ring. Ethan Harper. This is a surprise. Hi, Clara. Sorry to call so late. I need some legal advice. What kind of trouble are you in? The kind that involves family and money. She was quiet for a moment. Can you meet me for coffee tomorrow morning? 8 a.m. at Grindhouse on 5th Street? I'll be there. And Ethan, don't discuss this with anyone else until we talk. After hanging up, I locked my laptop and went upstairs to my small bedroom. Through the thin walls, I could hear Denise and Peter talking in the master bedroom, their voices too low to make out words. But I could hear the tone. Urgent, concerned, conspiratorial. They knew I'd found something. Maybe not everything, but something. I lay in bed, staring at the ceiling, listening to my family plot against me in my own house. Tomorrow, I'd start fighting back. Tonight, I'd let them think they still had the upper hand. Clara Weiss looked exactly as I remembered her from college, sharp-eyed and meticulously dressed, with the kind of focused intensity that had made her a formidable debate partner 20 years ago. She was already seated when I arrived at Grindhouse, a legal pad and pen positioned beside her coffee cup like tools of war. You look terrible, she said by way of greeting. Thanks, that's exactly what I needed to hear. I'm serious. When's the last time you slept? I slumped into the chair across from her. Hard to sleep when you discover your family's been robbing you blind. Her expression sharpened. Tell me everything. Start from the beginning. I laid out the whole story. The temporary living arrangement that had become permanent, the gradual erosion of respect and boundaries, the envelope I'd found, the documents that revealed months of financial fraud. Clara took notes in precise handwriting, occasionally asking clarifying questions, but mostly letting me talk. Show me the photos, she said when I finished. I pulled up the images on my phone, watching her face as she scrolled through them. Her expression grew grimmer with each document. This is sophisticated, she said finally. The joint account, the property transfer forms, the loan applications. Someone's been planning this for months, maybe longer. How is this even possible? Don't banks verify signatures? They're supposed to, but if someone has access to your personal information, your banking details, examples of your signature, she shrugged. The system assumes good faith. Family members living together have lots of opportunities to gather what they need. So what do I do? First, we secure your assets. Today, before they can do any more damage. She pulled out her phone and began typing. I'm sending you a list of steps. Change all your passwords, contact your banks, put fraud alerts on your credit reports. Can you do that this morning? Yes. Good. Second, we gather more evidence. What you've found is damning, but we need a complete picture. Bank records, credit reports, any other documents they might have. Can you get back into their room? They're both working today. Supposedly. Perfect, but be careful. Don't take anything. Just photograph it. We need them to think they're still in control. And then? Clara's smile was predatory. Then we destroy them, legally and completely. I spent the morning on the phone with banks, credit agencies, and fraud departments. Each conversation revealed new violations: unauthorized account access, forged signatures, identity theft. The scope of the deception was staggering. Denise hadn't just been skimming money, she'd been building a case for legal ownership of my assets. The customer service representative at my primary bank was particularly helpful. Mr. Harper, I show several recent changes to your account. A joint account holder was added 6 months ago, and automatic transfers were redirected to a new savings account. Did you authorize these changes? No, I didn't. I see. The authorization forms we have on file show your signature, but if you're claiming fraud, we'll need to investigate. Can you come in today to file a formal complaint? I'll be there this afternoon. By noon, I'd frozen my accounts, canceled my credit cards, and placed fraud alerts with all 3 credit bureaus. The loan application Denise had submitted was put on hold pending investigation. The joint account she'd opened was flagged for suspicious activity. With the financial damage contained, I turned my attention to gathering more evidence. Denise's car was gone when I got home, and Peter's truck was nowhere to be seen. The house felt empty, but I checked each room carefully before heading upstairs. The master bedroom looked exactly as I'd left it the night before. I went straight to Denise's desk, photographing everything in the drawer before examining each document carefully. In addition to what I'd found yesterday, there were several new items: correspondence with a real estate attorney, property appraisal documents for my house, and what appeared to be a draft will that left everything to Denise if anything happened to me. My hands shook as I photographed that last document. It was one thing to steal money, it was another to plan for my demise. In Peter's nightstand, I found business cards for moving companies, storage facilities, and apartment complexes in Florida. Apparently, they'd been planning their exit strategy, taking my assets and relocating somewhere I'd be unlikely to follow. The most damning evidence was in a folder hidden behind Denise's craft supplies. It contained detailed financial records going back 2 years, my bank statements, tax returns, property deeds, and investment accounts. Information they could only have obtained by going through my personal files or accessing my accounts without permission. There was also a timeline written in Denise's handwriting outlining their strategy month by month. Phase 1. Establish residency and gain access to accounts. Phase 2. Redirect funds and build joint assets. Phase 3. Legal transfer of property ownership. Phase 4. Relocation and new identities. New identities. They weren't just planning to steal from me, they were planning to disappear entirely. I photographed everything, my anger growing with each revelation. This wasn't opportunistic theft. It was a calculated long-term con game, and I'd been the perfect mark. Generous, trusting, conflict-averse, and isolated enough that no one would question their story if I suddenly decided to sign over my assets and move away. My phone buzzed with a text from Connor. Using your car again tonight, thanks. Not asking permission, not waiting for a response, just taking what he wanted, the same way his parents had been taking what they wanted for months. I texted back, no. The response came immediately. What? The car stays here tonight? Why? I already made plans. Make different plans. This is nonsense. I'll talk to my mom. Good luck with that. I turned off my phone and continued my search. In Connor's room in the basement, I found credit cards I'd never seen before. Cards with my name on them, but sent to a P.O. box address. The statement showed thousands of dollars in charges for electronics, clothes, and entertainment. Aiden's room contained similar evidence, plus what looked like college application materials listing me as his legal guardian and financial sponsor. They'd been using my identity for everything: credit, loans, legal documents, even family relationships. I wasn't just their victim. I was their meal ticket, their retirement plan, their ticket to a better life funded by my hard work and good credit. By the time I finished searching, I had over 100 photos documenting their fraud. I uploaded everything to a secure cloud storage account and emailed copies to Clara with a detailed summary of what I'd found. Her response came within an hour. "This is criminal. We need to move fast. Can you meet me at my office at 5 p.m.? Clara's law office occupied the top floor of a downtown building with views of the river. Her conference room was lined with law books and filled with the kind of expensive furniture that suggested success. She'd printed out all my photos and arranged them across the table like a prosecutor preparing for trial. "I've been making calls," she said without preamble. The bank confirmed the forged signatures. The credit agencies found multiple fraudulent accounts. And the real estate attorney whose card you found? He's never heard of your sister. So the business card was fake? Probably, or stolen from his office. Either way, it's more evidence of premeditation. She gestured to the documents spread across the table. "Ethan, this is one of the most comprehensive cases of family fraud I've ever seen. They've been planning this for years." "Years?" "The timeline you found starts 8 months ago, but some of these credit inquiries go back further. I think Peter losing his job wasn't bad luck. It was their excuse to move in and execute a plan they'd already developed." I sank into a chair, overwhelmed by the scope of their betrayal. "What do I do now?" "We file criminal charges: identity theft, bank fraud, forgery, conspiracy. The prosecutors will have a field day. But first, we handle the civil side. I'm preparing eviction papers and restraining orders. We'll also file for immediate recovery of all stolen funds and assets." "How long will this take?" "The eviction can happen within days if we can prove fraud. The criminal case will take longer, but the evidence is so strong, I expect plea bargains rather than trials." "And my family? My mother?" Clara's expression softened slightly. "That's the hardest part. Your mother may not know the extent of what's happening, but she's been enabling it. You'll need to decide how much you're willing to forgive." I thought about my mother's warnings to keep the peace, her insistence that family loyalty trumped everything else. Had she known? Had she been part of the plan, or just a useful tool for keeping me compliant? What about Denise and Peter? What happens to them? Prison, if they're convicted. Bankruptcy, certainly. Their credit will be destroyed, their employment prospects ruined. This kind of fraud follows you forever. And the boys? Connor's 19. He'll be charged as an adult. Aiden might get juvenile treatment, but he'll have a record. Either way, their futures just got a lot more complicated. I stared at the documents scattered across the table, each one representing another violation of trust, another betrayal by people I'd loved and supported. Part of me felt sick at the thought of destroying their lives. But a larger part felt something I hadn't experienced in months: relief. "Do it," I said. "File everything." Clara smiled, the same predatory expression I'd seen at the coffee shop. "I was hoping you'd say that. I've already started the paperwork. We'll serve them tomorrow morning, right after you leave for work. By the time you get home, they'll be gone." "Just like that?" "Just like that. But Ethan?" Her expression grew serious. "Once we start this, there's no going back. Your relationship with your family will be permanently damaged. Are you sure you're ready for that?" I thought about Connor's mocking laughter, Peter's casual theft of my identity, Denise's calculated manipulation of my trust. I thought about months of being treated like a stranger in my own home, of having my generosity repaid with contempt and crime. "They damaged the relationship when they decided to rob me," I said. "I'm just making it official." Thursday evening arrived with an unseasonable chill that seemed to seep into my bones as I sat in my home office, signing the last of Clara's legal documents. Eviction papers, fraud complaints, restraining orders. Each signature felt like a small act of liberation, even as my hands trembled with the magnitude of what I was setting in motion. "Initial here," Clara said, pointing to another line. "This authorizes immediate seizure of any assets purchased with stolen funds." I initialed the document, thinking about Connor's expensive gaming setup and Aiden's designer clothes. Everything they'd bought with my money would be gone within days. "And here," Clara continued, "this requests expedited court proceedings given the ongoing nature of the fraud." Another signature. Another step toward justice. "The sheriff will serve the papers at 9 a.m. tomorrow," Clara explained, gathering the completed documents. "I've arranged for a locksmith to change your locks immediately afterward. Your family will have 2 hours to collect personal belongings, clothing, toiletries, essential items only. Everything else stays for the asset recovery investigation." What if they refuse to leave? They'll be arrested. The evidence of fraud gives us grounds for immediate eviction, regardless of any tenant rights they might claim. Clara's expression was grimly satisfied. They've played themselves, Ethan. By stealing from you, they've forfeited any legal protections they might have had as residents. After Clara left, I walked through my house with new eyes. Tomorrow it would be mine again, truly mine, without the constant presence of people who saw me as nothing more than a resource to exploit. The thought should have been comforting, but instead I felt hollow, drained by months of betrayal and the knowledge that I'd been living with strangers who wore my family's faces. In the kitchen, I found Denise preparing dinner with unusual enthusiasm. She hummed as she chopped vegetables, occasionally glancing at me with the bright smile she'd perfected over 38 years of getting her way through charm. "You're home early," she said. "Good day at work?" "Fine." I poured myself a glass of water, studying her performance. Did she know I'd discovered her theft? Was this elaborate cheerfulness her way of throwing me off the scent? "I was thinking," she continued, "maybe this weekend we could finally tackle that wall between the kitchen and dining room. Peter's been wanting to open up this space, and I think it would really improve the flow of the house. My kitchen, my dining room." But she spoke as if the decisions were hers to make. "I don't want to knock down any walls," I said quietly. "Oh, come on. It's just one little wall. Think about how much more spacious it would feel. We could put in a breakfast bar, maybe some pendant lighting. It would be gorgeous." The answer is no. Denise's smile faltered slightly, but she recovered quickly. "Well, we don't have to decide tonight. Just think about it, okay? Sometimes change is good." Peter arrived home as we were finishing dinner, bursting through the door with uncharacteristic energy. "Family meeting," he announced, rubbing his hands together like a man with excellent news to share. "What's the occasion?" Denise asked, though her tone suggested she already knew. "Big developments on the job front, real big." Peter's grin was infectious, or would have been if I hadn't known what I knew. "Ethan, you're gonna love this." We gathered in the living room, the boys emerging from the basement with the reluctant air of teenagers forced to participate in family activities. Martha had been invited too, apparently, because she arrived within minutes carrying a bottle of wine and wearing her best dress. "This feels very official," she said, settling into her favorite chair. "What's the big news?" Peter stood in front of the fireplace like a man delivering a State of the Union address. "After 8 months of searching, I've finally found the perfect opportunity. Not just a job, a career, a future." "That's wonderful," Martha said, clapping her hands together. "Tell us everything." "It's a management position with a development company in Tampa. Great salary, full benefits, company car, the works." Peter's chest puffed with pride. "They want me to start next month." "Tampa?" I said. "That's quite a move." I know. It's far from family. But sometimes you have to take risks to build something better." Peter's eyes met mine with an expression that might have been sympathy if I hadn't known better. "The thing is, they need an answer by Monday, which means we'd have to move pretty quickly." "How quickly?" Martha asked. 2 weeks, maybe 3. It's a lot to coordinate, but the opportunity's too good to pass up." Denise jumped in smoothly. "We've been talking about it all week. It's scary to leave everyone behind, but Peter's right. This could set us up for life." I watched the performance with detached fascination. They were so good at this, so practiced in their manipulation. Create urgency, appeal to family loyalty, make the victim feel guilty for questioning their story. "What about the boys?" Martha asked. "Aiden's got senior year to finish." "There are great schools in Tampa," Peter replied. "Better opportunities for both of them, actually. Connor could get into construction management, maybe start his own business someday, and Aiden would have in-state tuition for Florida colleges." "It sounds like you've thought of everything," I said. "We've tried to. But here's the thing." Peter's expression grew serious, like a man about to ask a difficult favor. "The company wants me to start right away, but our first paycheck won't come for a month. And with the moving expenses, security deposits, all that..." "Here it comes," I thought. "We're going to need some help with the transition costs," Denise said softly. "I hate asking, especially after everything you've already done for us. But we're talking about a loan, not a gift. Once Peter's established, we'll pay back every penny." "How much?" I asked, though I already knew the answer would be substantial. 50,000, Peter said quickly. "I know it sounds like a lot, but think of it as an investment. In 6 months, we'll be financially stable for the first time in years. We'll pay you back with interest." Martha leaned forward in her chair. "Ethan, honey, this could be the answer to everyone's prayers. Peter gets a good job, the family gets a fresh start, and you get your house back to yourself. Plus," Denise added, We'd need you to co-sign on the moving truck rental. Our credit's still not great after everything we've been through. Co-sign. With my name on the rental agreement, I'd be responsible if they disappeared with the truck, which given their track record seemed likely. I don't know, I said. $50,000 is a lot of money. It's an investment in family, Peter insisted. And honestly, after everything you've done for us, this would make us even. Clean slate, fresh start for everyone. The audacity was breathtaking. They'd stolen tens of thousands of dollars from me, forged my signature on loan documents, planned to transfer ownership of my property to themselves, and now they wanted me to pay them to leave. I need to think about it, I said. Of course, Denise said quickly. But don't think too long. The company needs Peter's answer by Monday, and if we're going to make this work, we need to start moving on the logistics. What kind of timeline are we talking about? Martha asked. Ideally, we'd like to have everything settled by this weekend, Peter said. Get the loan paperwork signed, start packing, maybe have a farewell party Sunday night. This Sunday, I said. That's very fast. I know it seems rushed, but opportunities like this don't wait around. Sometimes you have to jump when the universe opens a door. Okay. After the family meeting ended and everyone dispersed to their respective corners of my house, I sat in my office staring at the signed legal documents Clara had left with me. Tomorrow morning, while my family was expecting me to hand over $50,000 and co-sign their escape plan, sheriff's deputies would be serving eviction papers instead. The irony was perfect. They'd created their own deadline, their own sense of urgency. By Monday, they expected to be halfway to Florida with my money in their pockets and my property in their names. Instead, they'd be facing criminal charges and looking for homeless shelters. My phone buzzed with a text from Denise. Thanks for being so understanding about everything. I know it's a lot to ask, but family takes care of family. Love you. I stared at the message for a long time before deleting it. Tomorrow, she'd learn exactly how family takes care of family when that family consists of thieves and liars. Around midnight, I heard voices in the hallway outside my bedroom, Denise and Peter, talking in urgent whispers. Thinks he's going to say yes, Peter was asking. He has to. Mom's on our side, and he won't disappoint her. Plus, we've got him convinced this is his idea. What if he wants to see the job offer, or talk to someone at the company? He won't. Ethan doesn't like confrontation. He'll write the check and feel good about helping us get back on our feet. And if he doesn't? A pause. Then Denise's voice, colder than I'd ever heard it. Then we moved to Plan B. The power of attorney documents are already prepared. One signature and everything transfers to me as his financial guardian. How do we get him to sign? Leave that to me. I've been managing Ethan his whole life. He'll sign whatever I put in front of him. They moved away down the hall, their voices fading to nothing. I lay in the darkness, thinking about power of attorney documents and financial guardianship. Even after everything I'd discovered, they had more tricks planned, more ways to steal from me, more legal traps to spring, but not any more. Tomorrow the trap would spring on them instead. I set my alarm for 6 a.m. and tried to sleep, knowing it would be the last night I'd ever spend under the same roof as my sister and her family. By tomorrow evening, my house would be mine again, and they'd be learning what it felt like to lose everything they'd thought they could steal. The call came at 10:47 a.m. on Friday morning, while I sat in my office pretending to review logistics reports. I'd been watching the clock since 9 a.m., knowing that sheriff's deputies were serving eviction papers to my family at that exact moment. Ethan? Denise's voice was shrill, barely controlled. What the hell is going on? There are cops at the house with papers saying we have to leave. Today. I'm sorry to hear that. Sorry? You're sorry. These papers say you're accusing us of fraud. Fraud, Ethan. Your own family. The evidence speaks for itself. What evidence? What are you talking about? We haven't done anything wrong. I could hear shouting in the background, Peter's voice rising in anger. This is ridiculous. We're family. You can't just throw us out on the street. You have 2 hours to collect personal belongings, I said calmly. Everything else stays for the asset recovery investigation. Asset recovery? Ethan, have you lost your mind? We're not criminals. We're your family. Criminals who happen to be family. The joint bank account you opened in my name, the property transfer documents with my forged signature, the credit cards you've been using without my knowledge. Should I continue? Silence on the other end. Then, I can explain all of that. Save it for your lawyer. You'll need one. The call abruptly ended. I turned off my phone and went back to my reports, feeling lighter than I had in months. Clara called an hour later with updates. They're out. The locksmith is changing your locks now, and we've secured all the evidence from their rooms. The district attorney wants to meet Monday morning to discuss criminal charges. How did they take it? About as well as you'd expect. Your sister tried to charm the deputies, then threatened to sue everyone involved. Your brother-in-law had to be physically restrained from breaking things. The boys just looked shocked. And my mother? She arrived as they were loading their belongings into a rental truck. Lots of tears and recriminations. She wants to talk to you. I'm sure she does. Ethan, the court date for the civil case is set for next Wednesday, 9 a.m. at the county courthouse. Are you ready for this? I thought about the months of disrespect, the systematic theft, the casual cruelty of people who'd seen my generosity as weakness. I'm ready. Wednesday morning arrived gray and cold, with the kind of bitter wind that cuts through winter coats and settles in your bones. I stood outside the county courthouse at 8:45 a.m., watching my breath form clouds in the frigid air, waiting for the confrontation I'd been preparing for all week. Clara appeared at my elbow, carrying a briefcase that looked heavy enough to contain evidence of multiple felonies, which I supposed it did. They're already inside, she said. Your sister hired Marcus Kellerman. He's good, but he's working with an impossible case. No lawyer can explain away forged signatures and stolen money. What about my mother? She's here too, sitting with your sister, looking like she's attending a funeral. We climbed the courthouse steps together, our footsteps echoing in the marble hallway. The civil courtroom was smaller than I'd expected, with worn wooden benches and fluorescent lighting that made everyone look slightly ill. Denise sat at the defendant's table with her attorney, wearing a conservative navy dress that probably cost more than most people's monthly rent. She'd styled her hair carefully and applied makeup with precision, the picture of respectability and wounded innocence. Peter sat behind her, looking uncomfortable in an ill-fitting suit. The boys flanked him, Connor in a wrinkled button-down shirt, and Aiden in what appeared to be his graduation outfit from 2 years ago. Martha occupied the front row, dabbing at her eyes with a tissue and shooting me looks that mixed disappointment with desperate hope for reconciliation. Judge Randall Pierce entered at exactly 9 a.m., a stern-faced man in his 50s with the kind of no-nonsense demeanor that suggested he'd seen every possible variation of human greed and stupidity. He reviewed the case files briefly, then looked up at the assembled parties. This is a civil action brought by Ethan Harper against Denise Harper Sutherland, alleging fraud, identity theft, and unlawful conversion of assets. Ms. Weiss, you may present your opening statement. Clara stood and approached the bench with the confidence of someone holding a royal flush. Your Honor, this case involves one of the most systematic and calculated examples of family fraud I've encountered in 20 years of practice. The defendant, taking advantage of her brother's generosity and trust, engaged in a months-long campaign of financial theft that included forged signatures, unauthorized bank accounts, and attempted property transfers. She gestured to the evidence table, where dozens of documents were arranged in neat stacks. We have bank records showing unauthorized transfers totaling over $40,000. We have credit applications bearing forged signatures. We have property transfer documents prepared without the owner's knowledge or consent. This wasn't opportunistic theft, Your Honor. This was a premeditated conspiracy to steal everything my client owns. Judge Pierce nodded grimly. Mr. Kellerman, your response? Denise's attorney stood, a silver-haired man who looked like he'd rather be anywhere else. Your Honor, my client acknowledges that certain financial irregularities occurred. However, these were the result of miscommunication and family arrangements that were never properly formalized. Ms. Harper Sutherland was acting under the assumption that she had her brother's permission for these transactions. Permission to forge his signature? Clara interjected. Objection, Kellerman said weakly. Sustained, but I'd like to hear the answer to that question, Judge Pierce said dryly. I watched Denise whisper urgently in her attorney's ear, her composed facade beginning to crack. This wasn't going according to whatever plan she'd constructed. Your Honor, Kellerman continued, my client requests the opportunity to address the court directly. She believes there are family circumstances that may provide context for these allegations. Judge Pierce looked skeptical, but nodded. Ms. Harper Sutherland, you may speak. Denise stood and approached the bench, and I watched her transform. Her posture straightened, her expression softened, and when she spoke, her voice carried just the right note of wounded vulnerability. Your Honor, I want to start by saying how much I love my brother. Ethan has always been the responsible one in our family, the one everyone turns to when things get difficult. 8 months ago, when my husband lost his job and we were facing homelessness, Ethan opened his home to us without hesitation. She paused, letting a single tear roll down her cheek. I know some mistakes were made with paperwork and bank accounts, but everything I did was because I was trying to help stabilize our family's finances while my husband looked for work. I never intended to hurt Ethan or take anything that wasn't freely given. I watched Judge Pierce's face, looking for signs that he was buying her performance. His expression remained neutral, but I caught him glancing at the evidence table with what might have been skepticism. The joint bank account was opened because Ethan asked me to help manage household expenses, Denise continued. He's always been too busy with work to handle day-to-day financial details, and the property documents were just preliminary paperwork. Nothing was ever filed or made official. What about the forged signatures? Judge Pierce asked. That's where things get complicated, Your Honor. Ethan has arthritis in his hands. It makes writing difficult sometimes. He's asked me to sign documents for him before, especially when he's having a flare-up. It was a masterful lie, delivered with perfect sincerity. If I didn't know better, I might have believed it myself, but Clara was ready. Your Honor, if I may present Exhibit A, Clara said, approaching with a thick folder. These are medical records from Mr. Harper's physician, Dr. Patricia Vance. As you can see, there is no diagnosis of arthritis or any other condition that would impair his ability to sign documents. Denise's face flushed, but she recovered quickly. Well, he complained about hand pain. I was just trying to help. Exhibit B, Clara continued, is a handwriting analysis comparing the signatures on the fraudulent documents to Mr. Harper's authentic signature. The expert analysis concludes that the signatures were deliberately forged, not written by someone with a medical condition. Judge Pierce examined the documents, his expression growing darker. Ms. Harper Sutherland, these analyses are quite damning. Do you have any response? I watched Denise's composure begin to crumble. The tears were real now, but they carried desperation rather than wounded innocence. She looked around the courtroom as if searching for an escape route, then her eyes settled on Judge Pierce. What happened next was so unexpected, so brazenly inappropriate, that the entire courtroom fell silent. Denise smiled, not the wounded, vulnerable expression she'd been wearing, but a different smile entirely, a sultry, inviting. She took a step closer to the bench, her voice dropping to what she probably imagined was an alluring whisper. Your Honor, I think there might be some way we could work this out between us, maybe discuss it privately in your chambers. The silence stretched for several heartbeats. Then Judge Pierce's face transformed, his professional neutrality replaced by barely controlled outrage. Ms. Harper Sutherland, are you attempting to proposition this court? I'm just saying that sometimes these family matters can be resolved with a little flexibility. The courtroom erupted. Peter jumped to his feet, shouting, Denise, what the hell are you doing? Martha gasped audibly, her tissue pressed to her mouth in horror. Connor and Aidan slumped in their seats as if trying to disappear entirely. But the most revealing reaction came from the gallery, where several spectators, court reporters, attorneys waiting for other cases, courthouse regulars, began laughing. Not polite chuckles, but open, derisive laughter at the spectacle of a woman so desperate that she'd try to seduce a judge in open court. Order! Judge Pierce banged his gavel, his face red with indignation. Ms. Harper Sutherland, return to your seat immediately. Mr. Kellerman, control your client. Denise's attorney looked like he wanted to crawl under the defendant's table. Your Honor, I apologize for my client's inappropriate... Your Honor, Denise interrupted, apparently unaware that she'd just destroyed any remaining credibility. I think you're a very distinguished man, and I'm sure we could find some mutually beneficial arrangement. Bailiff, Judge Pierce's voice boomed through the courtroom. Remove Ms. Harper Sutherland from my courtroom immediately. As the bailiff approached, Denise finally seemed to understand what she'd done. Her sultry confidence evaporated, replaced by panic. Wait, I didn't mean... Your Honor, please, I was just trying to... You were attempting to bribe a sitting judge, Pierce said coldly. In addition to the civil charges, I'm recommending criminal contempt proceedings. The bailiff took Denise's arm, but she yanked it free, turning to face me with an expression of pure hatred. This is your fault, Ethan. You tore our family apart. We're related, and you chose money over family. You chose money over family when you started taking it from me, I replied calmly. We gave you everything. We made your little house feel like a home. Without us, you're just a lonely old man with no one who cares about you. Without you, I'm a man who owns his own house and controls his own finances. The bailiff began guiding Denise toward the door, but she wasn't finished. You'll regret this. You'll end up alone and miserable, and no one will be there for you in the end. But I'll still have what's mine, I said. The laughter from the gallery grew louder, and Denise's face turned scarlet. She tried to lunge toward me, but the bailiff held her firmly. This isn't over, she screamed as she was led away. You can't treat family like this. Judge Pierce waited until the door closed behind her before speaking. Mr. Kellerman, I assume you'll be withdrawing from this case? Yes, Your Honor. Immediately. Very well. Based on the evidence presented and the defendant's behavior in this courtroom, I'm ruling in favor of the plaintiff on all counts. Pierce's voice carried the satisfaction of a man who just witnessed justice served with a side of cosmic irony. Mr. Harper, you are awarded full restitution of stolen funds, plus damages and attorney fees. All property transfers are voided, and I'm issuing a permanent restraining order preventing the defendants from contacting you or approaching your property. He paused, looking directly at me. Furthermore, I'm recommending that the district attorney pursue criminal charges for fraud, identity theft, and attempted bribery of a public official. The gavel came down with finality, the sound echoing through the courtroom like a gunshot. Around me, the spectators began filing out, still chuckling about Denise's spectacular self-destruction. Peter and the boys sat in stunned silence, apparently unable to process how completely their world had just collapsed. Martha approached me as I gathered my papers, her face streaked with tears. Ethan, honey, surely we can work something out. Denise made mistakes, but she's still your sister. She stopped being my sister when she started forging my signature, I replied. But the boys? Think about Connor and Aiden. They'll have criminal records. Their futures will be ruined. They ruined their own futures when they decided to help steal from me. Martha's expression crumpled. I never raised you to be so cold. You raised me to be generous and trusting. They took advantage of that. This is the consequence. As I walked toward the exit, Clara fell into step beside me, her briefcase swinging with satisfied momentum. Well, that was more entertaining than I expected. Did you anticipate the bribery attempt? Not in my wildest dreams, but it certainly made our case easier. Outside the courthouse, the winter wind felt cleaner somehow, less bitter than it had that morning. I stood on the steps, watching my former family load into Peter's truck, their faces grim with the knowledge that their comfortable con game was over. Denise sat in the passenger seat, her carefully styled hair now disheveled, her makeup smeared from crying. She looked up at me through the windshield, and for a moment, I saw something that might have been genuine remorse. But then her expression hardened into the familiar mask of entitlement and blame. The truck pulled away, carrying them toward an uncertain future of criminal trials, bankruptcy, and the kind of reputation that follows you forever in a small town. I watched until they disappeared around the corner, then turned and walked to my car. Clara handed me a folder containing copies of all the court documents. The restitution should be processed within a week. Your accounts are secure, your property is protected, and your family can't legally contact you again. Thank you. Don't thank me yet. Thank me when they're all in orange jumpsuits. I drove home through familiar streets, past the bank where Denise had forged my signature, past the bar where Peter had bragged about his house, past the coffee shop where Clara and I had first planned their downfall. Everything looked the same, but felt different, cleaner somehow, free of the weight I'd been carrying for months without realizing it. My house stood at the end of the cul-de-sac, looking exactly as it had when I'd bought it 4 years ago. The locksmith had done his work well. New deadbolts, new handles, new keys that only I possessed. I walked through rooms that felt spacious again, quiet in the way I'd forgotten was possible. In the kitchen, I found a note taped to the refrigerator, written in Denise's flowing script. You'll regret this for the rest of your life. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, then opened the refrigerator to find it fully stocked with food I'd purchased but never had the chance to eat. For the first time in 8 months, I could cook what I wanted, when I wanted, without considering anyone else's preferences or dietary restrictions. The evening news carried a brief story about the courthouse incident. Local woman charged with attempted bribery after propositioning judge. They didn't use Denise's name, but anyone who'd been in that courtroom would remember the spectacle for years to come. I turned off the television and sat in my living room, arranged the way I preferred it, without anyone else's belongings cluttering the space. The silence was profound, broken only by the settling sounds of a house that belonged entirely to me again. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. This isn't over. I blocked the number and deleted the message. As far as I was concerned, it was over. Justice had been served, my assets were secure, and I was free to live my life without the constant stress of supporting people who saw my generosity as weakness to exploit. The gavel had fallen, the verdict was final, and I was finally, completely, triumphantly alone.